the fat you eat is the fat you wear. That's a slogan that gets bounded around a lot in this community, doesn't it? Especially in that more sort of McDougall starch solution space, quite obviously, since that's from where it originates, of course. But do I think it's true? In my opinion, is the fat you eat the fat you wear? Well, certainly not literally, no. I don't think your consumption of an overt fat, even a food that's moderately high in fat, let's say, automatically leads to the storage of body fat. No, I don't think it's quite that straightforward. I think this is a soundbite that should be taken as just that, a soundbite. There's always nuance, there's always exceptions to the rule with such mottos and soundbites, right? So don't take it too literally. What I do, though, agree with McDougall on this, or I'm sure I do, though I haven't heard him say it in exactly these terms, I'm sure we're in line on this, given his other teachings, is that fat is by far and away, out of those three macronutrients, the others of course being protein and carbohydrate, fat is by far and away the least slimming. And there's a number of reasons for this, and the more longer term viewers will know that I'm going to mention calorie density here, because certainly, given that we care a lot about the calorie metric from a weight loss perspective, 1 gram of fat equating to 9 calories versus 1 gram of carbohydrate and protein only leading to yielding 4 calories. I mean, that's more than double on the fat front. So solely from a calorie perspective, you can already make the argument that fat is by far and away, considerably so, the least slimming of those three macronutrients. But it's not just that, it's also the way fat is metabolized. It's also the way it's processed in layperson's terms. Sorry, most of you do know what metabolize means. I don't mean to sound condescending there, but just in case you don't. I do think, albeit in both very different ways, I think carbohydrate and protein considerably more advantageous in terms of minimizing fat storage from them, even if the caloric amounts are the same. Now, this is where it gets you wander into gray area a little bit, because I think bottom line, if you're in a calorie deficit, even though I don't advise that you have a very high percentage of your overall calories coming from fats, you will still lose weight, bottom line. Will it be as effective as the same calorie deficit, though, when your fat is lower with a different ratio between your macronutrients? No, it won't be the same. So my view on this is, bottom line is, calories are the most integral thing from a weight loss or a weight gain perspective. If you want to gain weight, they're the most integral thing. They are, quote unquote, the bottom line. That's the crux of it. That said, your macronutrients can give you a bit more edge. So even if you have the same calorie deficit, at a different ratio, this is going to get really complex, folks. I'll try and do it as simply as possible. Even if you have the same you do two little tests here. Yeah, let's say you eat 2,000 calories and you have a moderately high fat diet. Let's say you do and it's still clean foods. You do because that would throw it off if it was junk foods as well. But you do 2,000 calories at a low fat diet. I believe if you ran that test over 100 people, 1,000 people, and there are studies out there that show this, that suggest this, that the group with the lower fat diet would lose more weight. Okay, the bottom line is the calories need to be in check. But in other words, macronutrients can also make their own difference. I just don't think that difference is as impactful as calories, excuse me. In the same way, there are studies out there that suggest, from a weight gain perspective, if you're eating a calorie surplus, having a different ratio between all your macronutrients can lead to more or less weight gain. So micronutrients, excuse me, are important, but if you're in a calorie deficit, the fat you eat is not quite literally the fat you wear. Does that make sense? And that's just my 2 cents. So as I say, it, in my opinion, should be interpreted as a soundbite, because that's what it is. And so I don't think it's literally true, but simultaneously, I think there's some truth to it. Does that make sense? I think fat is by far and away the least slimming macronutrient, and that is why overall, I advise a low-fat diet, but not an ultra-low-fat diet. I'm not on board with perhaps the 80-10-10 philosophy, which you may or may not be familiar with. I'm not on board. I always say, yeah, as I say, I promote a low-fat diet, but not a super or an ultra-low-fat diet. I don't believe that most folks should be omitting entirely any overt sources of fat, like the avocados, like nuts and seeds, and so on. I don't believe that everybody should just arbitrarily be cutting these things out, and that's my stance. Though, I think you should still follow, in my opinion, a low-fat approach. That's my opinion, for what it's worth. That's my 2 cents. Hope it helps in some way. See you soon.